Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Tayte for a very special spoiler discussion. We are, of course, talking Alien Romulus, which is now out in cinemas worldwide. It's had its opening weekend, and we are here to talk about it in, I guess, not just a lot of detail, but it's spoilers. We get to talk about the film because this is a film where there is a lot to be spoken about, not just what happens on screen. We've got some lovely behind-the-scenes politics. We've got some great compliments on creature effects and productions. We've got the CGI versus creatures debate, all that sorts of thing. Tate, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good. Good to be kind of, back talking about film again. I don't know why it feels like a long time. I think it's because there's been so many releases in such a short amount of time. I still haven't been able to see Trap. I still haven't been able to see the absolute glory that is apparently Borderlands. So there's so much that's out at the moment, and there's still loads of TV going on and everything like that. It's good to be able to, go ahead and watch a film, and, it would be interesting to talk about Alien as a franchise again.
Yeah, I've been trying to think, I haven't seen, and I still haven't seen, I guess is the keyword, Covenant. And am I right in saying that may be, I believe there is an archive old Alien review of the first four grouped together, but I don't believe it's a series we've ever done properly.
We haven't.
I know next year there's the Alien TV show, but it's set before Prometheus, so how alien can it be? I don't know, but I found out Aid Edmondson is in it this week, which is great. Don't know why he's an Alien show, but that sold me more than I was before. But yeah, it's something I don't think me and you spoke about it a lot. We haven't done a Ridley Scott retrospective. We've technically got a review out on Aliens. We've got Alien 3 through Cameron and Fincher, but no Ridley Scott. So that would tick off the other load. Very strange how that could have almost worked. And we almost did do Ridley Scott this year. There was a chat, wasn't there? But Gladiator 2, November 15th, people. We've been checking their schedules. But before we get into things, we do want to hear from people at home. So please do comment your thoughts on Alien Romulus. If you've seen the film, this is, of course, a spoilers discussion. So whatever you want to talk about, just comment it. We'll read them out. We'll have a chat. We want to know your thoughts. If you liked it, if you didn't. Things you disagree with us on, things you agree with us on, just your thoughts, and maybe some comments on the future of the Alien films, because I'm sure we'll probably have a chat about that toward the end. And if you want to find us and follow us on other social medias, we are using Instagram a lot more now. Facebook, Letterboxd, Twitter, Instagram. I've said that in a really weird order. It's just caught me off guard. And you can get links to all of those through linktree.com/cinemasavvy. But we are basically uploading clips of shorts. People want shorter clips from episodes. We are doing that a little bit more. And we're just finding the balance of not doing it too many times. So you might see a video from tonight pop up and it might have a conversation header like ranking the Alien films, but we're not doing that, but we could. Who knows? If we can get into a minute table, that's the challenge. But yeah, so follow us there, comment along tonight. We've got a few people watching. Tate, I'm just going to jump to you first because I know I did the spoiler-free review. We were meant to be at the premiere, but we couldn't make it work. Good friend of the channel, Neil from Get Your Comic Con, has done a great video of his day. He was sat next to one that had a face hugger go off. I'd have been terrified and buzzing at the same time. But I want to know your thoughts heading into this film with Alien and with Romulus in particular, because it feels like it's just come out of nowhere and the whole world was hyped for it.
So, flashback all the way to 2012, when I first started on YouTube. Yeah, we're going all the way back there. My second ever YouTube video on my old, now deleted channel was on Prometheus and how much I despised the film. And this is a person who quite liked Alien and Aliens. I'd never seen Alien 3, I'd never seen Alien Resurrection, but at least those two films I really enjoyed, and I kind of knew at the time that they were good cinema and stuff like that, and this was meant to be a prequel to them, and I was really excited about it. And I absolutely detested Prometheus. I still do to this day. I cannot bring myself to rewatching it. There's a list of films which, part of various different franchises, and unless we do an Alien retrospective and my arm gets twisted, there is no way I'm watching that film again because I thoroughly hate it with a burning passion. Anyway, fast forward to 2017, whilst I'm fully integrated into the channel at this point, and we reviewed Alien Covenant. And it was better than Prometheus. It still wasn't good. It was still trying to explain too much, and there wasn't enough Alien in the Alien film. It was more about kind of these spores going off and everything like that. And apart from Michael Fassbender's fantastic performance in that film and across those two films, they don't really give much to offer as far as, you know, the Alien canon is concerned. And, you know, it's just kind of placeholding kind of prequel. What I'm assuming they wanted to do as a prequel trilogy, but only ended up as two because it just wasn't well received across the board. Anyway, we now flash forward to now with the next Alien film. I guess coming off the back of, you know, a good success story like, you know, Alien Isolation, the video game, which was well received by everyone.
Yes.
And then off the back as well of Prey last year, another kind of, you know, alien monster film, which was fantastic as well. This film was inevitable. And do you know what? Straight away, you bring in a director who has worked on horror films almost exclusively. That's always going to help. That's always going to help because they bring those horror elements back to the genre. The one thing that people were saying about the previous films was it was too much like an action film. There wasn't enough horror in the horror film, whereas the original Alien was a pure sci-fi horror. Aliens is kind of leaning towards more kind of sci-fi action with horror elements in it. This brings it back to its roots. This brings it back to the very, very start and brings it back to those horror kind of tendencies. And that's exactly what I was hoping for. It's exactly what they played off with the trailers, exactly what they played off with the marketing, exactly what everything, you know, that was going into this film was pointing towards. This is going to be an alien horror film. And, you know, thoughts coming out of the screening, it definitely delivers on those elements. It is gory. It is horrifying in some parts. We'll talk about the ending when we get to it. But also it brings back that kind of quiet tension that runs through the Alien films, which is so good. You know, it brings back those quiet moments. We'll talk about the sound design and everything like that, but it's fantastic across the board in those things. And I guess that's something that only a horror director can bring to the board. You need those skills of being able to work with silence and light and everything like that to give yourself that atmosphere that's needed. Put yourself on a, you know, very narrow kind of congested hallway spaceship, and you're going to have a great kind of recipe for a film.
Yeah, no, I like a lot of what you said there. I'm just going to bring one comment by the Kegi, don't know how to pronounce it, sorry, he decapitated Batman. There's nothing wrong with it if you want a good popcorn movie, but for people who want a little more intelligence, creativity, and originality, it just doesn't work for me or them. It's very fair. We'll probably talk about a few things. There's certainly bits of this. I know I did the spoiler free on Friday night. Dear me, Friday night I spent watching Alien Romulus back-to-back with Spider-Man 3. That's 4 hours, and I can say it on this video, 4 hours of a lot of black goo on screen.
Yeah.
And I had a blast watching it at the cinema. I was completely caught off guard when the IMAX for a Friday at like 5:40 was... If my IMAX is like 2/3 sold out, to me, that means sold out, unless it's like No Way Home opening night or Bond or Avengers, like who's going to sit at the front center row one. That desperation, it's not that much, but it was very busy for Friday time. And I was like, oh no, there's going to be people around me. I was like, of course I get someone that's jump scaring every 2 seconds. Of course I partner someone that's going to be really loud and laughing, not at the film, at his partner, and like just being ridiculous. And I just had to distance myself. No popcorn munchers. I was like, you know, it's an alien film. I was having to think. I don't think I'd ever seen one at the cinema, and I'd seen Prometheus. And if I kind of took my background of alien films too, I'm in a very weird sort of trance with them where I feel like I saw Prometheus before I saw Alien. I can't lock it down for sure. I distinctly remember 2012 was, we're in the same year group at school, right? Just I'm a month older, but Dark Knight Rises was July, and I think Prometheus was June. And this was year 11. And at this point, I'm really getting into film. I'm already into film. I'm about to start studying at college. So I'm reading Empire magazine every month. It's a treat for my parents. And I just distinctly remember Michael Fassbender on the front cover. And I was like, oh my God, it's that guy from Inglourious Basterds. Great. And Prometheus had one of my favorite trailers. And I didn't know at the time.
The trailer was phenomenal.
The trailer used the Alien theme. So I spent years thinking this was a great theme to have known it was actually the Alien theme from 79, which is on me. But I remember at the front of this Empire magazine, I was reading it, and Ridley Scott was the guy. Is he Gladiator? And he was like, yeah, if this isn't an Alien prequel, like, get over it. That sort of backhanded comment. I was like, oh okay, I've not stayed in, so I'll see what this is. So my experience of Prometheus, I loved it. I still don't mind it. I actually wanted to rewatch it the weekend, but I didn't. I haven't seen Covenant, but obviously after Prometheus. I think probably that year when I've started A-levels, I'm at that point just watching films all the time. I definitely remember watching Alien 1 with my sister and then the other 3 by myself. And I loved the first one. I particularly enjoyed the second because I'm more into the action and sci-fi stuff. That was more of what I'm into. Alien 3, I just didn't care for. Alien 4, seen it once, never ever going back to it.
The pitch of Alien 3 because we did it on our retrospective, but we saw different versions of the film.
Yes, sorry, I was reading the comment. I'll bring that up in a minute. But the Alien 3 conversation, and there are people online that I have seen that like Alien 3. But to me, you've got these top 2 films that I just don't think anything will ever come close. And heading in toward Romulus, I say unaware. I remember seeing a tweet of the clapperboard of them on the set. Now we know it's the basement set. And I was like, oh, there's an Alien film. I swear there's an Alien show happening too. And there was this weird conjured blurred line between the pair. And then I just started seeing a lot of things ramping up in the last few months. I know it obviously wrapped last year. A lot of people were looking forward to there's a new Alien film this year. And I think they've nailed the marketing in the last month. It's had a great opening weekend, $100 million. It's got an $80 million budget. Finding out this was originally going to go directly onto Disney Plus/Star, wherever you're based. They were going to put it in the Prey route because of the backlash to putting Prey online. And Prey being the great film it was that a lot of people gravitated towards, which is now got I think it was Disney Plus's first film released on home media. I believe that the results of Prey ended up in Romulus becoming theatrical, but at that point in time, they've already got the budget for the film. They've cast everyone. So it's what it was going to be online. And I kind of appreciate this. I don't want to call it low budget because 80 was not low budget, but if there was a cinematic Alien film, it would have been $200 million and it would have been ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I feel like Romulus took it back to its roots. At one point, there's one alien hunting them to a degree. You kind of know what's coming if you don't know what's coming. But one thing I'll really praise this film for, and it kind of lines up what Cailee was saying earlier, and there'll be definitely a lot of things we speak about where there are things I don't like today. I don't think you need to have watched the Alien films to understand today. Some people are saying you do. I know it's placed between Alien and Aliens, but I do not believe there is core knowledge to have watched the film to understand this. However, you will be thinking, what the fuck is this CGI monstrosity? No, not the xenomorph. Of course, the android, which we'll get into a little bit later. But I think from a casual perspective, this might be a great modern entrance point for people that want to get into the Alien series. The timeline is all over the place. You can all do as you please, however you want to watch, whatever you want to watch. And I know there's a TV show in development next year, which is releasing next year. It was just exciting. Like, I'm going to cinema for an Alien film today. I don't get to see that too often these days. And I'd love to see the first 2 at the cinema if the chance ever came again. But it was one of those where I feel like granted, it's not your typical mid-August release, with the lack of blockbusters out. I know we've had Deadpool and Wolverine, but it was the right time to release this film. There's not many
100%.
Big films out. Like Trap's done well financially, which is great. This film's going to do well financially, which is great. Deadpool Wolverine, of course, is 1.1 billion, still growing at this point in time. Inside Out's done amazing, but there hasn't been these juggernauts every other week like summers of old. No. I think Alien's in a really good place. I know there's not much out in October. I know some people say should have come out Halloween, should have come out of this. I think they've nailed it with its release. It's got a 1 out of 50 runtime. There's demand there. People are looking forward to it. There's a lot of practical effects, and that's something people have wanted to see. And I'm not going to sit here and say practical is better than the CG. The 2 coexist. The best ones make them coexist. They don't overly rely on one when you can do the other. If anyone has Instagram, go look at Fede Alvarez's videos of the xenomorph, the mechanical robot, and then afterwards. It is phenomenal. But I'm just going to bring up a couple of comments before we really get into the sports side of things. Okay, again, I love the fan service of Deadpool Wolverine. It worked for me, and I went with it. I love the film. The problem with Romulus is every time I reference Alien movies, I cringed. I agree. And I think we'll get to there's 2 defining examples, I feel, and we'll get to them a bit later because they come toward the end of the film. And then I had some positive about the set designs, practical effects being fantastic. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I mean, Tayte, where do you want to start? I mean, talk about referencing of Alien films. We didn't know it at the time, but the opening sequence, a ship coming in to basically pick up some debris. We don't know what that is yet, but we know there's going to be something alien related to it. With let's just talk about it. It's later known that it's the remains of the
Nostromo.
alien that was blasted. I have some thoughts on this because I loved the opening sequence. We could clearly see miniature models, and I had a lot of Rogue One vibes in the sense that we've got this series from the 70s, 80s that hasn't gone away, but the approach to it is a director bringing it back to its core basics of how they made it back then. And if you look at Rogue One compared to some of the more modern stuff, there's so many miniatures being used, miniature sets, miniature models. It's going to age really well through that, and a lot of it looks great. And I felt like this film does that for a lot of the exterior stuff. Yeah. But certainly the opening, it felt like a traditional sort of 60s, 70s sci-fi setting, and it did a lot for me that this film felt like it was part of the Alien universe. I don't mean this in a lazy way that, it looks like it's from the 70s, but the way the film's been shot, the way that the set designers are working, the props, as we mentioned, yes, it's been made today. It's not been made like it's in the 70s, but they've aesthetically made it work into what made the original films work. And I feel like this is where filmmakers go too far one way or the other, where they get the CGI and then it's let's do this wild thing on this new planet, which I don't mind, but it looks weird at times when you're dipping here, there, everywhere. Whereas I feel like this film did a really good job of going back to that basics, and the opening scene set the atmosphere. We all know what was going to be in that rock, didn't we?
We all knew. And I just want to kind of hitch off the end of that. I do love the fact that they use the old kind of technology and they make it seem like it's new. It's one of my criticisms sometimes with Star Wars when they go back an era, but the technology seems brand new or something new comes up. And with this film, they really do keep it grounded within its universe. I mean, people have discussed it afterwards. Within the timeline, it is after Prometheus, after Alien 1, but before Aliens. So we know exactly where it is, and the technology reflects that. I know we'll talk about Ian Holm in a bit, and his role within this film, but it's the technology of the time, just maybe the wrong way of going about presenting it. In the same way that all the buttons seem the same, all the sound effects seem the same. It just feels like it's from the same vibe and same era. And you can have modern camera techniques, you can have modern things placed into that setting, and it can still feel like a film that slots perfectly into the timeline without seeming too old or too new for that setting. So, I was quite happy with kind of the cold open and the way they kind of introduced things, because you immediately got the vibe of the film straight away. It's going to be suspenseful. There's going to be loads of setup, and then we'll have the payoff kind of coming out at a later time.
Yeah, and I think if you get that wrong, if you get the opening scene wrong, that's going to instantly sort of not necessarily put people off, but not our age group because we were kids, but people talk about the Phantom Menace, right? Where the first line goes on screen and it's taxations of trade routes. And loads of people talk about how they basically zoned out from sentence 1 of episode 1. I find a bit ridiculous still, but I understand to a degree. I think you nailed the opening, and the score's Benjamin Wallfish in this, who does a great job. Not like, it sounds like an alien film, but
I mean,
there's nothing.
He did the pickup on Blade Runner 2049, didn't he?
Yeah, he worked with Hans Zimmer on it. He's done science fiction before. He's taken inspiration. I know there's no traditional alien theme, but there is like a motif that's used in the openings, which he does. And I kind of liked it, and the soundtrack worked as an overall for the film. It's not like mind-boggling. It's not up there with your Inceptions and stuff, but it compensated the on-screen experience. And when it needed to be quiet, it was quiet. When there needed to be jump scares, there was jump scares. And you get the soundtrack wrong again on a film like Alien, it's not going to work too much. I'm just going to really quickly bring up some more comments. I think Ridley Scott is the problem here, and that Fede directed it. I'm sure he was told to include certain ideas from Prometheus and Covenant. I agree. I had a friend text me saying he didn't like the Prometheus references. I was like, I don't know what those references were. I can't remember. But it was like the Prometheus rings, they called it.
They're talking, they talked about kind of, how they're able to get the virus and the engineering and put it on the planet and cause basically the events of Alien to take place and stuff like that. And they're able to recover it. So they mention Prometheus, and they kind of make reference to Covenant as well as events that took place.
And there's a Blade Runner reference when she was interviewed by the Terminal Woman. Did not realise that part.
Did not catch that. Although that has always been rumored that Blade Runner and Alien take place in the same universe. So You know,
I could see it work. I mean, should we talk a bit more about that universe? Like, if we jump into the opening, we're not going through it scene by scene, folks, but we have a schedule, so we're going to talk about the characters and the crew. And this is what I love. I'm not particularly big on horror as a genre. I never have been. I think you're in the same boat as me. You've got nothing against it. It's just not what you enjoy watching compared to others. The great thing about horror films is when you're meeting all the characters one by one and you realize, okay, this is the core group of who's going to get absolutely decimated throughout the film. I loved how this handled it. Yes, we get Cailee Spaeny right at the beginning. We know she's the lead from the marketing. It sort of makes sense that, you know, the Alien film always has a female protagonist. That's just how they work. Although I'm guessing Covenant was more Michael Fassbender than anybody else. No, I had Catherine Waterston, didn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't. And Noomi Rapace was
back for like a scene.
Yeah.
And we also have David Jonsson in this, or Jonsson, how it's pronounced. But we spoke about this for here live. I, for some reason, thought you'd seen Rye Lane, but you hadn't. I don't know who. I must have spoke to somebody on a show last year because it was. I just definitely spoke to somebody about Rye Lane, and he was in that, and he was great in that. He's then being cast into Romulus. He's working on a film at the moment. I forgot the director he's working with, but it's got a pretty good cast. Let me really quickly grab it if I can. The Long Walk. No, it's not The Long Walk. Or maybe it is.
Well, that's a Stephen King thing. That's got book. Judy Greer, Mark Hamill, Charlie Plummer.
Maybe it is that one.
Griffin Davis.
Okay, it definitely is that. Okay, that's good to know. Right, so David Jonsson, this. I don't know if this is in the marketing. I haven't spoke about. I spoke about nothing character-wise, spoiler-wise on Friday because I wanted to keep it for today. But I had no idea he was playing the android in this film. I don't know if this was well known before it started, but his performance, he is quite easily the best actor and character in this for me. One thing I really enjoyed about Prometheus was exploring the concept of David a bit more. That he was this untrustworthy sort of android who's working on the side, who's going to perform, you know, like a live what's he just name Rapis when he gives like a cesarean to get the alien out, and can't trust the guy. And I was really curious to this one. Okay, how are we going to play up the android angle? But the reprogrammed brother I adored. I thought his performance when he was playing the fragile sibling who's getting bullied in the street, he can't compete, he's making terrible dad jokes. I thought it was very funny, and he gave a very endearing performance in that side of things. And then as the film progresses and he becomes resected, he becomes this sort of terrifying walking chat GPT AI, which is quite something in this day and age to be having more AI, which we know is a real thing and we know is in the real world and people are afraid of it, etc., etc. But he doesn't just press his button and suddenly he's intelligent. He's evolving throughout the film. His performance evolves with his intelligence and his new programming. And I think for him being such a young actor with such a young cast, it actually separated this from the other Alien films. And I think it worked out for the better for all of them, because these are ultimately kids trapped on a planet who have no way to escape but slave away their entire lives. And they're looking at the chance to do better, and they've seen their opportunity and they have to. And I thought they did a really good angle bringing in the android for that.
Yeah, I mean, previous Alien films, you've had mining vessels, you've had military kind of exploration, you've had colony vessels, but this is more of a kind of opportunistic, just group of random friends. This is like just kind of Stand By Me, but they end up facing off against an alien instead kind of situation, where they're just trying to get off planet and make for a better life. It's not an official thing that they've been placed into. They are just opportunistic, and they just so happen to pick the wrong thing to go after. Kind of a be careful what you wish for kind of, storyline going on there. But, David Jonsson, he was the best actor in this film. I'd say by quite a bit as well. I think his performance was absolutely phenomenal. To be able to switch between, the fragile kind of Andy that's there from the very, very start, kind of, that kind of jittering and, slightly stuttered speech and everything like that, like a broken kind of android, that's just trying to survive and just really trying to look out for, his sister, the one person who is, his creator or his father at least has put him in charge of, to the kind of evolution of, taking on the extra trip, taking on the more responsibilities, and then suddenly becoming this, kind of untrustworthy kind of AI source that is not looking out for them anymore, is getting them into further danger, is kind of forwarding his own mission, everything like that. That quick kind of switch between the two characters was phenomenal. And the way he was able to switch between those towards the end as well was great. Like throughout the entire film, whenever he was on screen, you were paying attention to him because his acting performance really showed off his skills. Brilliant across the entire board throughout the film.
Yeah, and I think that kind of works in his favor that we haven't really seen an android like this. I'm sure someone can point out an error in their ways, but David was this great exploration. Let's cast Michael Fassbender, right, who's becoming a household name. I know that obviously Ian Holm you've got in the original one. I know that
you got
Lance Henriksen played him multiple times, and the first two is I didn't trust this one, but the second film, I'm going to learn to trust you. Third one is it's bringing back to life. Can't remember the fourth one. I'm sorry. David is obviously you can't trust me on Michael Fassbender. So I like that we have the innocence of a young, almost adopted brother in a way. And even the opening scene of when like the people are like bullying him, he can't compute what it is to be normal to read that. And I kind of love with the crew that get assembled in this. Particularly one of the characters who I don't have the name of to hand.
Was it Bjorn?
It was
the
Bjorn.
youngest one.
Because he hates the androids, and there's all.
Massively.
I'm like, oh no, there's going to be the old typical I don't like robot debates, and then it's his mother was Kilbo on. Oh great, so typical. But then the logic was actually with the android had to sacrifice 3 to save 12, and not that I'm thinking it, but you realize that it was a computer that made an analytical choice, and that they can't think like humans can think. And I like that we was going to play at that angle, and then he basically does end up deceiving them all time after time because he's got his new superior Ian Holm programming, which I thought was
a great twist. Plot point, great twist, but the Ian Holm part is the part which I think everyone has a problem with. And I guess this is the point where we dive into it. It's fine if you can have callbacks to a character that's gone or an actor that's gone. And it's okay if it's in a cameo form, I guess, at least from my perspective. But you've made Sir Ian Holm a integral part of this film who's throughout. And it's a very uncanny valley image. It's not someone practically put in place who looks like him, or someone wearing a mask and then them doing a CGI render over the top. It is literally just like a CGI render over like a doll, basically. Best way of putting it. It just looks so off and off-putting. And the fact that we keep on going back to him throughout the film reminds you of how off-putting it looks. And as the film goes on, it looks worse and worse and worse and worse. It's fascinating how for a film that's really good, and I gave this a really good kind of, star rating on Letterboxd or whatever, really enjoyed this film. It's fascinating how they could get something like this so wrong. Like, because without this film would be, I think everyone would be absolutely raving about it, and there wouldn't be much you could actually criticize on it apart from it being quite a basic plot. But the fact that it's integral and he's there all the time throughout the film and they keep on going back to him, it's really frustrating.
I'm in the same boat. I have no issue with using an old android that was around at the time of Alien 1 from an older model. These have always terrified me a bit, that their blood is basically milk. And I don't know if that was intentional to be terrifying back in 79, but it was when you found out that's how Ian Holm was going to sort of die. But it's always been a great mechanism. And obviously with Andy in this film, the opening scene is you get it from his ears like, oh, he's the android of the film. Great. That's not a big plot twist on the opening scene. That's setting the standard. But what I can't wrap my head around with Ian Holm is he passed me in 2020. I've read that his wife authorized this. She basically said he really struggled with Hollywoods in his latter years. He wasn't getting roles. It's something he would have wanted. And whilst I respect the family's wishes of that, I just can't believe how horrifically this was done. And I've really got to strip it down to its basics. This is a synthetic robot that could be chopped in half, that could be decimated, that could have no arms, no legs. It is chopped in half for its performance. You could literally deform the face, make it a mask, have someone impersonate the voice. You can make it look a little bit like Ian Holm, but tell it's a mangled Ian Holm. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. But I felt like it does the film a disservice that we are doing this because the CGI of that is not ready, and it is not ready to perform a main function of film. Now, it looks okay at the end when it was coming through the TV monitors, because that's filters that make that work. But when it's the scenes of him sat down talking, discussing, it was taking out the film so much. And it's really the biggest scathing criticism I have, because what this then does, it then opens the floodgates to the nostalgia overdumping. I'm not saying the film does that, but a lot of people will. A lot of people don't like. It's full of callbacks. It's full of this. And I'm like, well, when is nostalgia? If two aliens means it's copying aliens, then that doesn't really count, does it? But there are other times when I understand it. But the Ian Holm thing's like this glaring wart that you can't escape from. It's there, and it will be ever present for those discussions to talk about, solidify. And I think it does this film a disservice, because this film did not need the Ian Holm character. It's not the same android. If it was, this android survived too, I'd get that, but it's not. And that's what makes it inexcusable. And in a non-disturbing way, I'm pretty sure every other android actor is still alive. You want to pull a familiar face in, go get the money to Henriksen, go get the money to Fassbender. I know it was a lower budget, but it's something I've really struggled with. And Tarkin's the comparison we're getting online a lot. And me and you spoke about this. And I understand the Tarkin criticism of Rogue One. Personally, I like Tarkin in Rogue One. I think for the story and the Star Wars nerd within me, the film takes place in the days leading up to Episode 4. He is Grand Moff Tarkin at that point in time. There's a purpose for him to be in the film that's about the Death Star in second Episode 4. But if it was a random film between 3 and 4, then there's no business to have him in there. And that's where I'm a bit lost of it, that I just felt like this didn't need to have the Ian Holm thing, and it takes me out. And I'm going to talk about a couple of comments.
Yes.
Aaron didn't mind it. He wasn't sure it served its purpose for the story. And I agree, it does serve a story purpose, but the faces need to be Ian Holm. They could have fixed this so easy by casting an actor who looks and sounds like him, but was a real actor. I also agree. British android. It's a very British cast, actually. Now I'm saying that out loud. Spaeny's maybe the only American in this. Isabella Mercedes, but it's a very British cast, and we got a lot of we spoke about that earlier, but I'd have cast Eddie Marsan to play Rook. Yeah, he'd make a great android. He's got weird robotic features, and this is it. There's an ample of actors that would have done it, and it's like my only real criticism of the film. And they get away from her, you bitch. But you know what? That's fun. That's entertaining.
I will say that did get a laugh from the cinema.
It is nostalgia, but you can get away with that. It's, they didn't put Sigourney Weaver's face on him to say that. Do you know what I mean?
No. No, definitely not. Should we talk a bit more about some of the rest of the crew that get introduced before getting slaughtered beautifully? So we mentioned this is great, because when you have not a massive cast, you can kind of talk about everyone, and it won't take too much time. We have Eileen Wu, who played Navarro, who is the first victim of the aliens. So we go into the cryo chamber, or the kind of cool room. The facehuggers escape, and they latch onto her, which I'm a little bit surprised that she was the first one to get latched onto, seeing as there was multiple different faces that could have been latched onto first, but rather unfortunate. What was it, a 60-40% chance of her surviving or not? And I like the fact that there were cold logical odds put in front of them, and they were kind of debating that. And I like that idea that it wasn't guaranteed. It could have been a 50-50, but sadly from the trailer, we know that they are the first person to go. So it's very hard to, go, okay, if they're the first person that's going to die in the film, it makes sense that they're the first person to get facehugged. So Eileen Wu, not long for this world.
I didn't realize, and this is me being really thick, the love of the alien films is knowing who's going to go first, who's going to be the facehugger victim, right? Eileen Wu's face is all the marketing, and I just didn't put it together, because in the trailer they kept showing us one of the lads getting the facehugger on him. I don't know if I told you about this, but when I was watching Trap, they played the Alien Romulus trailer, and someone gagged at the facehugger being pulled out of the mouth bit, which was great, and I was like, the movies. The reactions of that same moment in this, where he's pulling it, it's on him but not fully on him. I love that little sequence of the facehuggers. But going to Eileen Wu, who's the pilot, the girlfriend of his in the film, someone's got to go first. It unfortunately had to be her. I believe it's her first credit.
Yeah.
She's spoken into me that she just, as usual, sent in a self-tape, but this time they wanted to be in the film. I thought that's great. It's going to, I hope, and not as an overview for this film, because I'm not talking about the cast too much, but certainly with the two leads, I see this being a film where people will look back in 10, 15 years. It's like, oh my God, this was at the start of Cailee Spaeny's career, it's at the start of David Jonsson's career. And I like those kind of films that time not only improves the film, but the cast that end up being in it can also have that enhancement. And even one of the lads in this one, the character of Yorn, played by Spike Fern, he played one of the Vandals in, I know it's Batman. The most minute thing. Yeah, the Batman. Yeah. He is like he's the guy in the street. You can't see his eyes, but it's like, that guy that's in the Batman was also an Alien Romulus. Great posters, using red posters for both the Batman and the Alien, I'm going to say.
Oh, yeah.
But I liked this group because you need to have the blend of characters I dislike and characters I like. And the one I wasn't sure about was Archie, who's the lead. He looks a lot like if Cristiano Ronaldo wasn't a footballer and was an actor at the age of 17 instead. And I couldn't unsee it about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
He had, I think, he had the teeth in the face. But it was, am I to trust this guy? Am I not trust this guy? They're being horrible to Andy. Were awful people. And I loved how this was setting up each character's downfall. But the person I am the most devastated for is character Kay, played by Isabella Merced, who essentially died 3 times. And she's
pretty
pregnant
much, yeah.
The whole film, it's not. I did think for a moment, oh my God, we're going to get a red wedding type moment, and we didn't. We ended up with something even worse. But she has the worst fate of any, and was really the most innocent character. She's asleep on the ship when the ship takes off. Her brother finds out she's pregnant, and she gets yeeted into the walls by the alien. And ultimately, she gives birth to one of the most disgusting creatures in modern cinema.
Yes.
that then kills her.
Yes.
Sucking her blood. I couldn't. Well, I don't want to know what it was doing.
I had the debate here. As a newborn, I assumed that lactating, but
could be anything. It was very, because it grows. It was disturbing, but you know what?
It was unbelievably disturbing. Yeah.
And that's, for me, one of the standout things is I've had this disturbing image in my head. And the last time I had this in a horror film was the windpipe sequence in Nope, which is still traumatizing me today. And I love that comes down to creative, not production designs, creature effects department or storyboard artists, everyone responsible for taking that concept on paper through to the basketballer playing the performance to it. I know I've jumped to the ending, but yeah, the right kind of, the entertaining, disturbing, I'm going to remember this for the good reasons of the film, not just for this thing looks disgusting, what's it doing in a comedy spoof or whatever. This film really delivered with what those are that are grotesque. That goes all the way back to this poor group of people. As you said earlier, it's just they want to take a chance and try and get out from where they are, and it's where it leads them. But how do we want to talk about it? So we're going to talk about them getting off one by one, or should we keep it in story order?
I guess we can kind of talk about them getting off one by one, because after we lose our first member of the crew, we lose Navarro, we do lose Bjorn next pretty quickly afterwards, don't we? With him trying to use the cattle prod, he gets quite a painful death as well, with being kind of acid melted.
Body explodes, which I didn't really understand.
I think this is, if it drops onto the chest would expand.
Yeah. Okay. His way was brutal. To take the stick out, thinking he's won. And you know what? I know it's jumping ahead. The xenomorph coming out of the egg sequence was. I'm not going to act out because I'm at home, but when you just sat there at the cinema, and there's the old FIFA meme, right, where it's sit forward with the remote.
Yeah. My
one at the center of this is I basically I'm just sat normally, and I'll just put my leg up. You can't really sit, but I'm you're still for 2 hours, aren't you? Yeah. And I'll put my leg up, have one knee crossed. I'm let's fucking go. And that was all these people horrified at the alien birth sequence, and I'm just sat there not cackling, but it's that meme where it's it's sickos and it's a man through the wall. He's yes, yes, yes. That weird thing. That was me at the alien birth sequence, because I was in awe of what they were doing. I know it's literally a xenomorph. We've seen a gazillion of them in many different films, but to get that on the big screen in 2024, knowing it's an animatronic one, the way that scene was edited, the jumping in between Isabella on the floor, being mortified, knowing what's going to come next, to Bjorn slowly dying, to bits of the alien coming out, I thought it was fucking incredible. But what it did, which is a massive plus for the end of the film, is the end of the film, there are more aliens on that ship. Not too many more, just a couple more.
Yeah.
But it hid that so well. But the birth sequence was a tremendous job. And it felt, I mean, if I'd never seen an alien film, I didn't know anything about Alien, you'd probably be terrified. You'd be thinking, what the fuck is going to come out of this egg right now? And this is what I'm saying is I think this film's going to do a great job for people who are new to the series. Yes, people like us who've seen the others who are familiar get a bit of a kick out of it, but I definitely think it's going to be a really good introductory point for a lot of others.
Yeah, 100%. And it is horror. That is what it is as a genre. It's a horrifying creature, and then suddenly it's on the stalk. And we get that really interesting standoff with Andy refusing to open the doors because he knows that the alien is waiting. It's an intelligent creature. He knows they all die. And that's exactly the same as, putting in front of Tyler once again, the whole debate of, saving 3 lives to save the 7 kind of thing. And at that point, it's quite a cold thing to say, but it's very logical and it probably is the right decision. So it's fascinating that that's presented immediately. And at that point in time, Andy's probably seen as the villain because, he's started to turn, he's decided to choose things differently. But realistically, if he'd have opened that door, everyone would have been dead. So it's putting logic in practice. And that was I really enjoyed that scene just for that, of the cold kind of brutal nature of Android and kind of logic being placed in front of that situation. Once we have the aliens kind of roaming around, stuff like that, we have a few different sequences that take place, then kind of moving across the ship, blah, 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 whatever. We then get into a situation where Kay gets taken. They have to try and track her, try and find her and stuff like that. And they manage to, they're trying to escape. They manage to kind of find her in the basement and stuff like that. And they think about kind of getting her away. But before that, we do get the whole reason why Andy's being rerouted, which is to try and find the black sludge kind of stuff from the Prometheus films, which has been refined at this space station, that's been kind of turned into something that could regenerate the human race, but actually it's going to turn them into horrific monsters. And they just haven't kind of figured out yet that the tests were a failure instead of a kind of, a clean pass. We then get to probably one of the most interesting sequences of the film, which is the basement sequence.
We got aliens.
There's like an extra... more than one.
You know how in Top Gun Maverick, and I remember at the press screening, when the mission ends and he wakes up in the snow and he starts running, I was like, oh my God, we've got like a mini Mission Impossible film inside Top Gun Maverick. And I was like, oh my God, we've got a mini Aliens film inside of Alien. Because I was literally like, we had the tunnels, we had the incredible production design. We had, and sorry to be nerdy about guns, this belongs on a Star Wars thing more than I guess an Alien one, but the pulse the return of the pulse rifle, which is right up there, one of the greatest sound effects in cinema. To have the explanation of how the gun functions, how the gun works, I was sat there like, oh my fucking God, I cannot wait. I cannot wait for this. I can't wait to hear the sound of it. And they delay it as long as they can before we get to hear it in its glory. And it's a really interesting sequence because the whole film has been marketed as the one alien on the ship, hasn't it? Going back to its roots, one alien, blah, blah, blah. The fact there's actually a load of hidden ones, and we get a very cool not even the anti-gravity sequence, we get very cool logic from the android that, hey, yeah, you want to kill them, we know you can kill them. By the way, if their acid touches the floor, we're in the basement of the ship now.
You die.
So you're fucked. And I thought for the first time of this film, I was like, wow, I feel like we've actually got odds. The characters actually are in peril. That they could die because we know how easy it would be in other films to shoot their way through them. We've seen it a million times. But to get it in a really interesting way that when you inevitably use the gun, you're going to have time. To then bring back the anti-gravitant sequences from the start, I thought was a very cool way to bring that in. To then use the pulse rifle as like a movement,
way
of
like moving around,
and I thought it was a really cool sequence, and it worked for a final act thing. It didn't end up being the final act because of what happened after, but what did you think of that whole sequence? Because I guess some people might not like that point. They might think, oh, we're too much like aliens. Oh, look, the gun, this. But I felt like it was pretty unique. And I don't mind there being more than one alien.
It was unique. It was cathartic in the sense of kind of her trying to escape. And on top of that, it just felt like kind of, the film needed a bit of an action beat at the time. Throughout the Alien films, there have been various different action beats. The first film was more kind of suspense action beats, where probably the most exciting part of the entire film is maybe the air duct sequence and stuff like that, just purely out of the kind of tracking involved in that, and apart from obviously the original chest bursting scene. But as you go through the other Alien films, there's always been great grand kind of sequences that take place at certain points where people make either heroic sacrifices or they're able to, outsmart or outwit the alien kind of beyond, what's in front of them. So I really enjoyed the sequence, especially kind of the consequence of the sequence. We know throughout the film, because it's been set before, that there is a timer taking place, that the anti-grav will turn back on or off again and do a gravity purge every 5 or so minutes. So it places that timer back onto it. So she knows that she has to get through that entire sequence and then have like 5 minutes to spare to get out of there. So it's a proper kind of tight spiral on the timings and everything like that. And that's one other point I wanted to bring up. I didn't have my watch on me in the cinema, but my friend did, who I went to go see the screening with. They were very close to the timings of the countdown. When it said 40 minutes to go, there was about 40 minutes, and it felt like 40 minutes had passed. It's always a massive thing in cinema when they put a timer on. Say it's like 10 minutes until the bomb goes off, and then it takes 20 minutes for the bomb to go off. This was very close in timings. The only timing that we think was slightly off was the final 10-minute timer, which we believe to have been a little bit quicker. But I mean, I even came up with a counter argument of, you've got the things happening with Rain and Andy. You've also got Kay doing her own thing on the ship, which is happening at the same time. So I applaud the film for being close on those aspects, because that's something that always angers me in cinema when they get that wrong. But it just felt like a well thought out film, an intelligent film. Even to the point of, the standard horror film, you've got to have a moment where it's like either don't go in there or maybe don't inject ourselves with the black alien goo, which we don't know what it's going to do to us, which kind of happened towards the end and creates our climax.
Yeah, I mean, at that point in time, I thought, well, there's the sequel. We're going to get the Alien 3, the ship's crashed, we'll see in a bit. And it had the old, we're settling down. What a day, that meme. And it was one of them where, just as you think this one's about to end, now I'm on a timer here, guys, because I've got a screening of Spider-Man 3 starting. I know there's a 10-minute overlap. I'm like, right, get the bag ready. Let's just, literally the screen next door to the screen I'm in as well. And then it was the emergency sign starts coming in. It's like, oh my God. And I was like, and then they whack her out. The baby bump was there, she's given birth. And I could not believe what I'd gone on to see. The birth of the offspring, which it's being called. Giving birth to an egg was one of the most batshit insane images, I think, of cinema this year. To seeing the newborn baby, which looked like an engineer too, and I don't mind that Prometheus continuity, because their blood is what is in that black stuff that spawned that, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into Prometheus, but I was like, oh, gross. And then it just scurried away. And I was like, oh my word, we're getting a final act, aren't we? And the most disturbing 5-10 minutes of cinema this year, the most disgusting images, creature effects, body horror, the comments have it as, I couldn't fathom what I'd seen on screen. Everyone has the reaction. I'm thinking Crabman from My Name is Earl, someone's put on Twitter the brother thing that's gone viral recently. It was fucking insane. And full credit to everyone involved, from storyboard to creature. And I feel really bad I called it disgusting when you find out it's an actual basketball.
It's Robert Bobrovsky, famous basketball player. He was a meme first, if that helps. But he 7'7"?
Practical effects. There we go.
Practical effects. And he looks absolutely terrifying and horrifying as it's kind of coming towards you. It is truly kind of like, I was thinking like Del Toro kind of levels of kind of creature horror, but thrown into a dark, flickering room at the same time that could jump out at any point, and is also has the power and strength of like the alien. It's like, Christ, that is truly horrifying.
It's the tail that's massive as well, and it's a really interesting design because at no point is it it's a human with a bit of alien things. It feels like we've actually tried to design something between the two that isn't too much of one or the other. We're going to take bits that work for some and not on the other. And I liked it, the bigger it got, the more deformed it then looked, and its bones were sticking out of place. And it's going to be images. It reminded a bit of Dead Baby Voldemort from the Deathly Hallows. And I remember laughing at that when I was 15, and now it's come back to haunt us in adult form. And I just have to say,
I did mention it before we went live. You do have that crossover with Alien Resurrection, which I've never seen, but I'm aware they do have an alien-human hybrid that is birthed in that film. And I believe Fede Alvarez did not do the research to know that was already a thing within the Alien canon. But now this is in there for a second time in a slightly different form, I guess, because it's not really the alien kind of infecting a human and then giving birth to an alien-human hybrid. It's more of a human being kind of pregnant, already having the baby inside you, so already having the building blocks there, and then being injected with this kind of symbiote-styled thing, which has gone and latched onto and changed the DNA of and kind of gone in and malformed what's growing inside of them already. I know symbiote straight into Spider-Man 3 afterwards.
I was literally thinking, like, do I do like I can't do it, but yeah, if Topher Grace had popped up in the end screen, that would have been terrifying.
Honestly, what a double bill! What a great call on the double bill! Yeah,
it worked out well. It's worked out a lot better than Trap into Spider-Man 2. I'll tell you that. But yeah, 4 hours spent with lots of black goo and aliens. Who doesn't want that in their life? But it's a really interesting, and again goes back to the marketing. They kept this away. They marketed it as the Alien film, so you didn't expect what was to come. And I know that when the high-res clip hit the internet, it's going to be something a lot of people talk about, a lot of people speak about. It'll probably be used in meme culture, but keeping that quiet and not having people spoil it. I understand some critics in America actually spoiled it. I luckily avoided all of that, but a few friends that were at the premiere said that people were spoiling it online, which I thought was wrong. They're doing a great job to keep that quiet, and now it's out there. It's obviously very different, but I had a lot of fun with that, and it worked for an extended sequence at the end. We always knew there was going to be a survivor with Cailee Spaeny. I like the fact that her brother's still alive. It's setting them on a journey. She doesn't care that he's not allowed to visit the next planet. She cares that they're going to be there together, which I quite liked. And yeah, it made for a satisfying Alien film, which I haven't had the luxury of having for me to. And there's only really been one Alien film since, but it's one of them where you kind of missed it. Like, it'd be great to see not more of them, not less. Not, less is more sometimes. But if this Alien Predator film they're talking about wants to actually happen, that wasn't just a question at a press screening. Get that conversation going, because as far as I'm concerned, we've had a back-to-back good Alien and good Predator film for the first time in a very, very long time. But yeah, where do we go with this? I mean, what else is there to talk about? We've spoke almost an hour. We spoke about a lot of spoilers. We spoke about the Offspring. Do we talk sequels? Do you think we get another? Do you think we get a Romulus sequel, or do we think that we? I don't know. I'm curious what.
I mean, you've still got Cailee Spaeny, who is a young actress who could go into more films. They could make use of the fact that you've also got another good young actor in there with the role of Andy as well from David Jonsson. You've got 2 solid actors there. You could easily milk another film out of that. And yeah, I just wanted to say, hold on, I want to bring up this comment. Not that one. Where is it?
This one?
That one. This is Disney, of course. We're getting more sequels, shall we say, added in. I feel like they can go place with this, especially with Fede behind the wheel. They've definitely got those horror elements coming back in. I know people said, there's a bit too much kind of like, nostalgia baiting and everything like that with the film. But I mean, it's quite a simple plot. It's nothing too it's quite linear. But it worked for what it is, which is a suspense horror in space, which you want. And it's got the alien in it, which is a terrifying creature, which people want to go and see in the Alien films. Looking at you, Prometheus, an alien film that doesn't actually have an alien in it. But yeah, it's exactly what you want to see when you go and see these kind of films. So I definitely see power in making another film in this franchise based off these characters. I also see them doing another Alien film from a different situation, different place. I know that Kegi also mentioned that it's the fourth film now where an alien's got sucked into space, and that's kind of how it's died and how it's ended. Take that. That's where Alien 3 is different, guys. Not a bad film if you watch the correct cut. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see kind of different ways of them coming up with defeating it. It'd be very different to see what the situation would be like if they don't have a gun and they have to just survive and everything like that. But I see a breath of fresh air into this franchise. I can see more things happening. So we'll see where it goes from there. But I fully expect more stuff to come from this universe in the future.
I'm in total agreement. I think where my mindset goes with this is actually, I think Disney wrote a bit of an apology by a lot of people, myself included, that when Disney bought 20th Century Fox, was it back in December 2017, the announcement was coming through, they'd bidded for them. Everyone's like, oh my God, we're going to get like a 12A Alien, we're going to get a 12A Predator, we're going to get a shit Planet of the Apes film. This year, we've had a banger Planet of the Apes film to kickstart a new trilogy. We've had a great Alien film. We've had a great Predator film 2 years ago. We've had Avatar films that have been coming from them.
We've had Deadpool,
Disney
Wolverine.
have actually Deadpool, Wolverine, of course, one of the biggest ones in the last month. Disney clearly deserve a lot of credit for what they've done. Now they're not scot-free with Fox. They've not produced a lot of Fox films. They do it under Searchlight banner, but they have delivered with those IPs so far. And if it is to be an Alien vs Predator film, I have total faith that we'll have the first very good Alien vs Predator film. As you said, do something different. I could easily see an AVP film right now. If we're going to get practical effects, if we're going to have aliens like what we've had with this, obviously we know Predator's a man in the suit. I'd love to see what actors they want to put in the film. I'd love to see who comes together for it. I'd love to see which director or directors want to come together to make a film such as this. But I'm totally on board. I think this has a second bit of life. You mentioned Alien Isolation at the beginning of the film. Fede Alvarez says that was one of his influences for this film, was playing Alien Isolation. Massive credit to the video game industry. I was terrified playing that game. I couldn't finish it. I very rarely finish a game. That's how good that game did a job of being a horror film and an alien film. And I think the Alien franchise might end up owing that quite a lot as time goes by. But heading into this, my final thoughts of Romulus, I thought it was great. I do want to see it again. Will I see it at the cinema? One of my sisters wants to go, so maybe. I will be picking it up if it is. Well, it will be available on home media because it's not straight to streaming. And kind of in line with that, how lucky are we all that this film wasn't just dropped on Disney Plus on a Friday for it never to be spoken about again in 2 weeks' time?
Yes.
It's having a very healthy box office run, and I could easily see this setting up things. What I do hope is that if there are sequels, don't just chuck money at it, Disney. Do what you've done with these two. Get yourself your filmmakers, get the story, get the budget, make the film that works for it. Less is more, and that works with the budget too. But yeah, your final thoughts?
My final thoughts, I really enjoyed this film. It's nice to be talking positively about a film in the Alien franchise for the first time since I've been doing film reviews. It's just good to see good cinema, or cinema that isn't, complete dog water like Borderlands has been, out there and stuff like that. It's turning out to be quite a good year for cinema in general, whether it's the blockbusters, whether it is, the kind of indie picks or anything in between. We, of course, will always have, bad picks, but this one being not completely terrible is always, a nice positive. And I have faith in this franchise a little bit more now, heading in the direction. Who knew, hiring a horror director to direct a horror series franchise would, make it into a good film again. But, I'm looking forward to, where they take this and, how these characters develop if they go forwards, or any Alien films in the future if they plan to go in that route anyway.
Definitely. I'm just going to read the last few comments before we log off. So, this Inferno, give Ridley Scott, make Prometheus 3. I agree. I've seen a lot of people clamoring, saying Ridley Scott deserves his third film. Listen, he's like 89 years old. He cranks out a film a year. He's just coming back to do Gladiator fucking 2. So, if he wants to do Prometheus 3, I would say let him. Furiosa is better than Romulus. Ooh, good question. I'll discuss that at the end of the year. I need to rewatch both. And another triumph for cinema. Love to see it. Keggy, Inside Out 2 and Deadpool v Wolverine has made $3 billion worldwide, so they don't care about the haters. Snow White versus Alien in the future. And just a final last one I'll talk about. I think Romulus' sequel could take place in Wayland Yutani prison because Ray and Andy are now criminals. I like
Alien Free.
Yeah, and I like seeing the world. I know we didn't get a lot of time because of the budget, but I liked, oh, look, here's a planet where the sun doesn't shine. Great. Simplistic, sci-fi, ridiculous. I'll take it. I'm in. And that's where we're going to go today. So thank you to everybody at home who's been watching, for commenting all along. You've made this chat a lot better. I'm glad you've enjoyed this video. I'm glad you've enjoyed the film. If you didn't enjoy the film, thank you for commenting along to talk about your problems with it. We do want to hear from you. If you're not watching it live, do not worry. You can still comment and let us know your thoughts on Alien and Romulus. If you like this video, do consider hitting the subscribe button. There's a lot more reviews coming. We've got a lot of new videos coming. There's plenty of things happening on the channel, so do stick around and you'll be able to see what we're working on. September's going to be where it really ramps up for the rest of the year for you all at home. If you want to find out about other videos, what else we're working on, we tend to announce everything on social media, Facebook, Letterboxd, Instagram, and Twitter, all under linktree.com/cinemasavvy. Go on to our Instagram. We've got a lot of clips from episodes now if you want to have a look at those. But that is everything for today. I don't know what video is next, so follow us on social media. We'll announce them on there. And when we've got the next stream, we will let you know what we are talking about. But it's good to be talking about films again, not just TV, which has been the way for many months recently. So once again, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.